Well, good morning, everybody. We'll get started here in about 4 minutes. If you haven't already and you're a Gemini school, please check in via the chat. Well, welcome, everybody. Good morning. Hopefully, everybody can hear me okay. If you've got your video up, you can just give me a thumbs up that you can hear. Okay, I see a couple. So, thanks for joining in this morning on this Gemini 1 meeting, the first one of the new year. We've got an exciting format. We're ready to roll out with our, the next 7 Gemini meetings will be basically used with our Mercury schools, both the elementary and the secondary, to further connect you all, the 2 groups that are out there doing the redesign work in Kansas. So just a couple things as we get started. If you haven't already and you're a Gemini school, if you please would just mention in the chat who's present. We're going to start today with an interview, and I'm kind of covering for Tammy because she's actually in Olathe, and the school that she's in is trying to block her from participating today. Their filter's pretty strong there, so she can join in as much as she can, but she's having trouble via her phone participating in the discussion this morning. So I'm going to start with. Actually, this morning, we're going to start with an interview with Meadowlark Elementary, which is one of our Mercury elementary schools. And we have some questions that we're going to ask as we go through. So hopefully some of these questions, they line up with some of the questions you all may have. If not, towards the end of the interview, feel free to use the chat and ask questions, or if you want to unmute and ask directly questions of Meadowlark, feel free. So I'm trying to see if Shauna Evans is on, and she's waving at me, so that's a really good sign. Okay, can you all hear me there in Liberal at Meadowlark?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's great. You guys are coming through loud and clear. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll have about 30 minutes here with the interview with Meadowlark Elementary, and then after that we'll roll into Liberal High School. And I see Ashley and Scott on with us this morning, so we're excited about that. And then towards the end of our meeting today, after the 2 interviews, we will have some time for announcements from Tammy and I, and then any questions the group may have generally speaking with the Gemini schools. So with that, we're just going to jump right in. Meadowlark Elementary, if you could introduce yourselves to the group, and then we'll get started with the interview.
Okay, I'm Shauna Evans, I'm the principal. I have with us today Lynn Day, who is our instructional coach and also our pilot. We have Miss Mo Mulligan, who is our kindergarten teacher, also on our leadership team. And we have Diane Wyrick, who's a 3rd grade teacher.
Well, thanks for joining us this morning.
I'm here also, Jennifer Hyde. I'm a co-pilot, Meadowlark. I don't know if they can see me or not. I am in Salina.
All over the state of Kansas today. That's great. So, Shauna, could you talk a little bit about the pilot and the co-pilot and how that served you well as far as the redesign team?
Absolutely. Couldn't have done it without both of these ladies. It has been, it's a challenge to juggle our everyday activities with the redesign process. And so I had, first of all, they volunteered, but they also served with our accreditation team. And so we saw how these really aligned well with each other. And so they're not only in charge of redesign as our pilot, co-pilot, but they also help with our accreditation plan as well. But these ladies help lead the process.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the, as we look back at the Mercury schools and the progress that they've made, that was one of the early wins, is when you develop your redesign team, that you identify that pilot and co-pilot to really drive the work. And these are different roles within our schools, but we know that as far as the administration that is along in the school and leading the school on a daily basis, it's easy to get caught up in that whirlwind of the everyday workings of a traditional school. And so having a pilot and a co-pilot to really drive the work has been highly successful so far with our Mercury. So it's great that your pilot and co-pilot are with us today, and the rest of your redesign team. So Shauna, if you could, or anybody else that's part of the team, could talk a little bit about some of the redesign strategies you're piloting this semester.
Sure. Okay, so one of the things that, you know, as we were finding after we did our needs assessment with our staff, we decided that one of the things that was going to be a really big goal that we needed to set was personalized learning. So we are right now currently piloting some technology that we are hiring to help us with that personalized learning and filling those gaps that our students have. For math and reading, we're piloting iStation and Edmonton. We are also piloting Dreambox in the math and Reflex Math. We will eventually be working with the Lucy Calkins writing program, but that takes a little bit more training. So we're going to be training next week in that program. And then for a project type of format, we're looking at STEM Fuse. And so some of our teachers are piloting that.
I'm sorry, we got a couple of comments in the chat that they're getting a little feedback from Liberal and they're not able to hear everything. Could you repeat just specifically what you are using again?
Edmonton for math and reading, iStation for math and reading, Dreambox Math, Reflex Math, and STEM Fuse, and then writing in Lucy Calkins writing, units of study.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, and Jennifer's also typing it up in the chat, which is great. So they've got that. So
Yeah, I'm getting the feedback as well, but I can type it in the box if they can't hear you.
okay, thanks so much, Jennifer. And we are recording this as well, and on my end I can hear it really well, so the recording should capture all this as well. Could you talk a little bit more about the pilot? You talked about the things that you are piloting, but talk a little bit more about the process of piloting. How many teachers and students are involved in each pilot? How is that determined? How long will it last? And what have you had to overcome as logistically speaking to really pull off these pilots?
Okay, so as we were going through our research, we quickly came to the conclusion that once you find two really good things that you want to pilot, that's really pretty doable. And so that's where Edmonton and iStation came in as our main focus for that personalized learning. And so each one of the research teams for math and reading presented that to our whole staff. And at that point, teachers were got to choose if they wanted to pilot, and if they wanted to pilot with.
So it doesn't sound like theirs is a whole school thing.
Yes, we are whole school pilot. Lynn, you're muted. Somehow you got muted. There you go.
Okay. So did everyone get that about signing up for the pilots?
You might, yeah, I think we got cut off.
Okay. Something I wanted to add, Lynn, on that, when we did our piloting, you know, we gave teachers the choice whether to pilot or not, but I do believe that everybody chose to pilot something. Isn't that right?
Yes. Every regular classroom teacher chose to pilot at least one program. Some are doing multiple programs. And through that, then we've had, we came to understanding that we needed tasks and training. So we, when we came back from Christmas break, we had set up trainings for the teachers to be able to come in and get a little bit of training on the programs they were using so that we could give them a fair chance to work.
So that's an important aspect, I think, of when you pilot and you're trying on new things, is that you have an avenue for all of your staff to be participating in that. And, you know, you provide ways for them to choose. And I think that's a strength in what you've got going there at Meadowlark. So thank you for that.
Jay, another thing that we did is we sort of front-loaded the teachers a little bit before they came in to sign up for their pilots. We gave them a little bit of information about the programs that we were looking at, and so they had like almost a week to think about that, or over the Christmas break to think about that. And then when they came back, some of them had already made their decision on which programs they wanted to. Sometimes they made that decision as a grade level to do one pilot within that whole grade level, the same one. Some decided to split the pilots between the two different programs, and so that they could see how it worked at their grade level using two different ones. So I think that helped a little bit. At first, when we started signing up, we were a little bit concerned because there were not very many people signing up. But as the day went on, more and more people came in to sign up, and it turned out to be very successful that way.
I will add something that we did implement that has helped us tremendously. You know, we came, I don't know if anyone knows our background, but we're a brand new school, and this is our very first year as a staff together. So we have that challenge on top of the redesign, but we have dedicated 2 hours a week, and we call it Twisted Tuesday. And during those 2 hours, our paras have the students, and they are doing a variety of events and activities with them. But then our teachers have those 2 hours to research together, to spend time looking into the pilots and getting the training.
So one thing, Shauna, if you could expand a little bit on that, I think that's a great point. And talk about empowering, how you've empowered your teachers to lead through this redesign work.
Well, I have 2 of them here, actually. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Okay, so, well, one that we're doing in 3rd grade is reflex math. And so we've all had the initial training on that, and that's going real well. We've incorporated that into our math center time, and we like that it's engaging. The students seem to really like it, and so that's a real positive, is seeing that they like what they're doing. We're also in 3rd grade, we're doing iStation reading and iStation math. We're getting to know the reports. We just recently on Friday took the initial assessment. And so now this week, our kids, it's been their first time to be on iStation. And we're starting to get some data. We have some data in reading already that we have just discussed and had a plan for next week to do some teacher pullback with lessons in that area. Math right now, we don't have any data yet because they haven't been on it very much, but we hope to get more data from today, and that will help guide us where to go with our teacher pullback with lessons.
And these 2 teachers serve on our leadership team. We have a team of actually 10. And so they have been assigned, or they signed up for an area from our plan, and they are leading those research teams. Each one from our leadership team are then going out and leading that research time with those teams. And so they are the leaders within that area.
So far, I just would like to say that the students, again, with iStation also, they are enjoying it. It's engaging for them. And I just recently created a template that is going to kind of guide and have some student choice in centers involving the iStation reading and the iStation math. And so we're going to also try that out next week and see how that goes with our kids, having a little more choice rather than being told what center to go to. Of course, the iStation, though, they have to go until they meet their minutes, according to the program. And so it's going really well so far for the beginning of it. So it's just very, very exciting.
So that's a great point about student choice. And that's a big part of redesign is we're trying to create these more student-centered environments. And along with that comes some student choice. So could you talk about any of the pilots that you're running where you feel like the students do have more choice in what they're learning and how they're learning?
Yeah, I think right now, like my kindergarten classes, we're working on, right now it's still kind of separated between reading and math, but I would like to eventually see us give them more of like a block of time where they can choose to work on math or reading during that time. That's something we have to work out with like our kindergarten schedule, but for like our writing pilot, it's gonna lend itself to a lot of student choice on what they specifically write about, what kind of topics they're covering. It's not so set in stone that they have to work on this one thing at the same time as their peers. And it also allows for us to set individual goals for them and kind of track that data rather than setting class goals or expecting them to all be on the same page.
We also have talked about setting some goal sheets. And so the students would get a goal sheet on Monday, and this is what you have to have completed by the end of the week. And so they get to choose when they get that completed, but it must be done by the end of Friday.
And that's how my template is. I've starred the things that they have to do by the end of the week, and so they'll know that those have to be done. And because we do have to give grades, I've also starred things that that I'm taking a grade from. And so that way they know that those things do need to be done. Like she said, they're due by the end of the week.
Mm-hmm. Also, with us being able to choose what pilot programs we've been doing and the research teams we were working on, we also had a choice in that. I feel like it kind of gives a new light to what student choice looks like for kids because we're modeling it as teachers right now and as a staff. And the engagement level from our staff, I feel like, is really high because they're working on things that are meaningful to them that they chose to work on first. And I know for myself, it's like, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to go to research days because this is something I'm interested in. And I know that that's how my kinders are feeling when I give them a choice of what they're working on as well. So I think it's an exciting thing. And the pair is the same way. We're giving them a choice of what activities they're doing during our Twisted Tuesdays. And that allows for them to be more engaged and excited as a staff. And it just kind of carries through the building and trickle down effect.
That's great. And it just sounds like such a good way, you know, an appropriate way to consistently be giving more and more choice to students in an appropriate way. So could you talk a little bit about the data that you're using to determine if what you're piloting is actually effective?
Okay, we're going to be using map data as part of it, but we're also using the data from within the programs that we're going to be, because we feel like even in the short amount of time that we're going to be piloting them, that we should see some improvement in our students. And then we'll be, and like I'm collecting data if I can on a program every week, and I'm putting that in a folder, and we're going to take a look at that data as we go through the pilots and see what trends we're seeing. Are we seeing improvement in our students?
I can tell you that we had a couple teachers that went ahead and started piloting on their own back November, December, and the data they're getting right now is very exciting. We're seeing huge growth already.
That's great. When you go to all that work to design these redesign strategies and empower your students and your staff, you want to make sure you've got some way to actually measure the effectiveness of what you're trying on. So it's great to have that end in mind kind of mentality as you move through the pilots. So there's a couple of questions coming through the chat, but Jennifer, you're doing a great job of keeping up with those. It's kind of nice to have kind of a two-pronged attack here. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I can answer the questions while they're talking because I've got the chat up too. So I'm just kind of answering that as we go along. So if there's something that somebody has a question with, just put it in and I'll try to answer it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. So the next question that we have is, and again, these are common questions that we get as we go out and work with schools, and what steps are you taking to keep all staff, parents, community members, keep them informed, and what do you plan to do with that communication plan moving forward?
We have some research teams. One of our research team is actually family engagement. That's their focus. And so they are making plans of how we're going to roll this out to parents, because we've touched on it. We have conferences in February, and so that will be a discussion point that we will have. Our community has been so supportive. We had a breakfast where we invited some business leaders to come and hear our plan, what we're doing. And from that, we had several contact us and say, hey, I have something that might help you out. And so it's just has spun off from that, I think. We also have a group that's focusing on community involvement. And so on our Twisted Tuesdays, we have community coming in already, working with our kids. We have a Parks and Rec director that brought in a few people, and he planned some stations for our kids. He loved it. We had our fire department come in, our police department come in. We've just had such awesome support from our community members that they want to come in and plug in. We've had people that we had no idea that they could help contribute. We have a local rancher who has a connection with an organization that takes broken down bikes, sends them to a prison in Ellsworth. They repair them and they send them back, and we can give them away. And so we had no idea that was out there. So this has really opened the doors to some things that we had no idea these resources were available to us. So it's been very exciting. Because of our Twisted Tuesday and the time we have built in, we're able to have those community members come during that research time and talk to those research teams and explain how they can help and hear from our plans.
Jay, one thing that I think is important to realize, one thing that as we were getting started with our research, our district was very supportive and gave us 4 half days that allowed us to really dig in deep. So we not only had our 2 hours on Twisted Tuesdays for those 4 weeks, but we also had an afternoon to really dig in and really get started. And I really think that helped jumpstart us. And now we're sort of cruising along, I guess, with the Twisted Tuesdays. And it really allows us to make those Twisted Tuesdays productive, but we don't feel the need to take any more half days at this point.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And the thing that strikes me about that too is you've done just like Shauna said, you create before, in our traditional system, it really didn't lend itself to reaching out to the community as much as it takes to really pull off, the redesign of your entire school system. So that's great to hear. So some of those, moving forward with the pilot, this is one of the things that Tammy and I have been looking into is other models that have been redesigned in not districts per se, but in schools. And some of the hurdles that they had to clear early on, once they launched their system, they found out that they were ahead of the parents, that the parents had questions once it was launched that they could have probably answered prior to launch maybe a little better. What are some things that you see as on the horizon, maybe with the pilot things, the redesign strategies that you need to communicate more with parents?
I would say the biggest thing right now is grades. You know, we're still with the letter grade system in our district. And I think that's going to be probably the biggest shift for our parents is understanding a new system. So I see that being probably our biggest challenge and something we're going to be posing to parents in February.
Yeah, and it's funny you brought that up because the models that we've studied where there has been pushback from parents, it's been around the new grading system. You know, moving from the letter grades to maybe a competency-based education system, those kinds of things. Those are big paradigm shifts for the adults. And so that's really wise of you to have that on the forefront. So just a couple more questions. What's been the biggest challenge that the redesign team has faced to date?
Time. I think finding the time. And like I said, our district is really, our central office has really been supportive in that, and also the community, because there's times when, you know, we may be a little shorthanded because we have paras that are out, and it seems like that we have, when we have those community members coming in, that sort of relieves that stress. And so I think that's probably the biggest battle.
Between that and trying to just juggle the everyday, you know, if we weren't doing redesign, what would we be doing? So we still have both of those things going on at the same time. And so it's the balance. It's finding the time to be able to focus on redesign, but yet I know in my position, especially, I still have teacher evaluations. I still have parent communication and all that, you know, entails in my job every day. So that's probably the biggest challenge.
So, and I probably, you know, the other Mercury schools and the Gemini schools even out there would probably echo that as well as a challenge. But how much time would you say on a weekly basis is the redesign team able to focus on actually redesigning?
Well, I'll say, I mean, Lynn and I communicate every single day. I mean, we are constantly in communication about things. Like I'm not there today, but we've already been emailing back and forth and everything. So we are constantly, you know, trying to figure things out, planning, you know, asking Shauna and Melinda questions about what we need to do next. We're talking to Tammy a lot, even if it's not a Zoom meeting, we email her. So Lynn, I think we, you know, we do it every day. I don't know how many hours.
I think, you know, I'm an instructional coach, so that allows me a little bit more flexibility to work. I would say if you can have someone that can sort of organize, because when you originally start, when you first start, there's all these ideas coming at you at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And so you really have to sort of build through those and organize them and sort of put things to the side that are things that maybe we need to look at, but maybe that's down the road. It's not the more immediate thing. So, and with me being an instructional coach, that gives me a little bit more flexibility with my schedule, but I do spend a lot of hours outside of school getting things done. I mean, that's one of the challenges, but it's going to be worth it. We know that, but it is a lot of time for, I know definitely the pilot and co-pilot, our research teams right now, we're at the point where we're maybe going to be able to, with just the core team, meet once a week, like 30, 45 minutes, because we're in that piloting phase. And I think that sort of, until we can make some decisions, that sort of slows those meetings down. Other than that, before we were meeting once every 2 weeks for the whole day, and substitutes were hired to cover the classes for the teachers that are in the regular ed classroom so they could attend that meeting all day.
Fantastic. So just wrap up, and we've got to wrap up pretty quickly here before we move over to Liberal High School, but could you talk about maybe just one positive experience, maybe the major positive experience that you've had with the process so far.
With our staff. I think the growth of our staff together, I mean, it really has, where the choices have been presented to them and then they get to make the choices on what research team they're on, whether they're even on there or not. We've been fortunate that everyone chose to be on a research team and they chose to pilot. But I think those all happened because of the relationships that were built as we started in that research process.
Remember, I said we didn't know each other. We all came from different schools, and so we had that challenge, but I can tell you that it really has brought our staff together, but the buy-in from the staff has been awesome.
And I think that, just to add, I think it goes back to our staff and the needs of our students. We all came from different backgrounds in different schools, and we knew that the needs of our students were going to be different. But after we got going and seeing that what we'd been using is not working, and these students need this redesign, they need a chance, they need something different. And so that's why I think all of our teachers are awesome at realizing that and being able to work together with that. So it's really for our students.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time to share with the Gemini schools what's been going on at Middle Ark Elementary. I know that you know, Tammy and I have a lot of time to talk in the car after we leave Liberal, so we know things have been going really, really well. We're so proud of the efforts going on there at Middle Ark Elementary, and I'm channeling Tammy with what I shouldn't do. She's just so impressed with the work that's gone on there at Middle Ark. So switching gears, we're going to move over to Liberal High School. They've been waiting patiently. I think they've got two.
Hi guys.
They're really teched out over there. So why don't we take a moment for our redesign team members from Liberal High School. If you could just introduce yourself, and then we'll get started with what we're going to talk about today with the Gemini schools.
All right, I'll start. My name is Eli Swati. I'm a language arts teacher and the pilot, I guess you could say, for our team.
Ashley Kappelman, I'm the principal.
And Scott Hinkle, I'm one of the assistant principals.
And I was just out there this week, and so I'm sure they're not happy to see me again, but it's just good to have you all on and out there in Liberal. And so why don't we talk a little bit about your story and talk a little bit about the process that you followed last semester, you know, as you formed up your why. Talk a little bit about the process through that.
Well, we really started even, you know, just kind of the ballpark in the summer of if we get this opportunity, how we want to move forward with this. And so we started our why then really looking at the students, getting student feedback, looking at questions we'd asked the students in the spring of last year, even because before this whole redesign started, we knew we wanted to make some changes. And so this gave us some data to start with before we even began this whole redesign process, which then was a kickstart and guide us as we move forward in terms of what they needed, what they wanted that we were not providing them. So we started with our students primarily first, and then it's just kind of grown and expanded through that.
Okay, so you started with students to form up your why. Definitely, I know that having been part of several student panels out there, I know Ashley has organized a lot of student feedback, and even just you know, through formal processes, but also through informal processes, and just going out into classes and talking to students about, you know, what they'd like to see as far as a redesigned system. So that's a great overview of where you started. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of the redesign strategies you're piloting this semester, or you're researching further as you work towards launch next year, next August?
Okay. I think probably our biggest one, well, first of all, our biggest move is going to be a change of schedule. And that's something that we went back and forth on to the Flexmod schedule.
And we visited a few schools and we heard mixed results as far as whether to try it or not to try it. And we decided as a staff not to pilot the actual schedule. One, it's going to be really difficult to build in the first place. And two, we don't want to, it's going to be tough once it's is up and running in the first place. And we don't want to discourage teachers, especially at the very end of the year, because we already know there's going to be kinks to work out. So the biggest one we'll probably run now is for lunch. Student feedback, shocking. Students find that lunch needs to be redesigned. And so we are looking to have a more open setting, not open within the campus, not off campus, and more lunch choices, more opportunities just to eat where they would like within the building. And so 2 days a week, we're actually still waiting for final approval on it. What we'd like to do is 2 days a week, we have e-time, which is kind of like a homeroom, and we'll take time off of that to put into lunch, to expand the time for lunch, so we have time for the cafeteria to serve differently and kids to have just a little bit more time at lunch. We're also doing some different things. Sorry, I'm looking over at my board that has them listed. Just different pieces of instruction. We've got a problem-solving model that we want to start. So a few teachers are piloting that within their classrooms and collecting data on rubrics that they have, as well as growth mindset instruction. We have one teacher doing an action research where he's teaching growth mindset a little bit on occasion throughout the week to some classes and some classes not. And then he's looking at the growth that they make pre and post test. Some who are just doing with all their classes, they're teaching growth mindset and again, looking at results from that. Large group instruction, the senior English, they have combined at times to do with a larger group of students, and which also is consequently some team teaching as well. And then mentoring. We have a student, we have a couple of different, actually 3 different teams that are primarily students who've made them up and it's their signature move, but one of them is mentoring. And so he's worked out, he on his own went to 2 elementary principals. One was Meadowlark, and has worked out a way that we can have our students be paired up with Meadowlark and Prairie View students. And then we talked, those students then in turn will be mentored here, the high school students. And then we also have talked about some discipline. We had a team that was for discipline and prevention of discipline, that we may be looking at some of the strategies that the students came up with on that to pilot as well.
So could you talk a little bit more about the teams? Because you've mentioned those several times, the discipline team, the schedule team. Could you talk about the process of onboarding all staff? Similar to Meadowlark, they've got each staff member on at least one research team. Could you talk about the process of onboarding all of your staff onto the various research teams that you've got moving forward?
Okay.
Well, I'll talk on this one. So Mrs. Kaplan had the idea to kind of continue the same concept of the Mercury 7 project. And so using that idea of the space shuttle plaque with the signatures of the astronauts on there, she put together this inspirational video to get our staff members thinking about it. And then the next week we were able to come back, and this included teachers and paras and secretaries and custodians, anyone who works at the school. And we met and discussed this concept of signature moves. And the ultimate goal is that when we come back and have this redesigned school, Mrs. Kaplan had this idea to actually put these physical signatures around the school that says, this is what I did. This was my part of this process. And so she front-loaded that, and we talked about that, and then we had this great opportunity where we just opened it up for the teachers and the staff and said, sign up. I mean, where do you want to put your signature? How do you want to be a part of this? And we suggested that they only pick one because of the time that it would take, but we had teachers signing up for multiples because they had an opportunity now to really become part of this process, and they were very excited to do that. And so that immediately took our involvement from small teams to school-wide, and it would be very effective.
And then to kind of what Eli said, once we did that, they met as groups within the school, and so you can imagine with the number of staff that we have, of finding times that all of them could meet. And kind of like Meadowlark said, it was amazing how those teachers found time with paras, secretaries, educators, all different walks of life to come together for the meeting. And so there's another one that's not with us, but Eric Olmsted. So the four of us were kind of over those, but really they had people within their group that they just took all the different teams. And that's where, like what Meadowlark said, that's when the buy-in came. And that's when the teachers really started to, because now, like we said, it was their signature move. It was their passion. It was something they were interested in. And then I'll let Ashley talk a little bit, but we brought all those groups together right before Christmas because there'd kind of been all this build up, all this research, and it was like, hey, when do I get to talk? You know, when do I get to tell everybody about what we're doing? And so that's how we finished the semester.
It's been pretty exciting, the ownership and what they come up with. And we really did, and the four of us talked conscientiously about, we had ideas for different things because we'd gotten to go see some schools, but that we really were leaving it to the teams to decide. We gave very little parameters because we thought, you know, if we're saying this is a team and a school-wide effort, putting a lot of parameters on it really is just us making the plan in disguise. And so it really is what they came up with that we're kind of putting together.
So Ashley, you mentioned a school visit, and I know that you all took the initiative to travel to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and visit some schools in that area. Could you talk about the decision that led to you all taking that school visit to Green Bay, Wisconsin? And I think that's one of our, as Tammy and I reflect on the first semester, one of the accelerants of redesign is actually going and visiting a school model, because seeing is believing. And sometimes it takes getting out of your own insulated, your classroom and your schools to go see other models to really kind of help conceptualize what you want to do. So could you talk about that visit to Green Bay and what you were looking for and what you learned?
Sure, absolutely. So, and kind of what preceded that is we had a meeting, a redesign team meeting, where we talked about an article that was, I think, from the Padlet, that was that this is not a tweaking of the system, but an overhauling of the system. And we recognized that we were still thinking of tweaks, and so started looking at videos and different things that was truly redesign, and stumbled on to the Flexmod schedule. And so in looking at it, we recognized early on that this is something that would be outstanding, but also something that's going to take a lot of time. So we didn't have time to wait until January to see if that's something that was going to work for us. And it was extremely effective, because when you see that in action, it was just the feeling of that. And we went, the four of us, and two of us went to the first day, two of us went to one school and to another. And we all four came back just absolutely excited. Jacked is the word we use a lot, but where we could not quit talking about it. We went to Wausau West, Pulaski High School, and then Sheboygan. Sheboygan was something that was closer to our demographics. We wanted to make sure also if we brought something back to our staff that would say, yes, demographics similar to ours, it's worked there too. The kids, just the feel of how the kids had so much investment and choice in their learning. We saw a student panel there. They talked about all the things that the redesign team and the staff, and even the students, had for our vision as far as increasing responsibility and problem solving and just opportunities to do what they're passionate about. All of that was available through this schedule. It worked, and that worked for us for what we wanted to do. But it was an extremely valuable trip. And then we scheduled, before we came back, the very next morning. We got back late on I think it was a Wednesday night, and first thing Thursday morning we talked to the staff. We didn't want any time to go by without bringing that information back. We weren't sure if we were going to make it at one point. Our flights were delayed and all that. It was kind of a rush, but it was a good trip.
Wonderful. And I know that really really instigated and a lot of discussion, a lot of dialogue. And I, having just been to Liberal and seeing their, I called it their war room, where they're creating all the teachers' schedules. It's an amazing, intricate, and complicated thing that I know that a couple of your staff members are really putting a lot of time into. So thanks for sharing about that. Could you talk a little bit about any of the data that you're looking to collect through these piloted redesign strategies? I mean, you talked about lunch, piloting some different things. Could you talk about a little bit about the data that you're looking to collect from those pilot redesign strategies?
Sure. Lunch, and when the team said they were piloting something, that was part of it, is they had to describe what they'd be looking for, what does success look like. So for lunch, we've already done some student surveys, so that data will be some of it, but also lunch count. We've had a tremendous problem with skipping during lunch. So we want to know, are more kids staying to eat now that they have the options that they want? They get to eat in a little more flexible situation. And then also looking at even feedback from the staff, from the cafeteria staff, on how timeframes and how everything's, if we can make this work, the timeframe we have set. With rubrics, the problem solving, and the problem solving actually includes growth mindset, the rubric for that, and so it's kind of meshed together where they're measuring that, and then also with pre and post data on different assessments.
In terms of course offerings, we inundated our students with Google Forms. So we had a number of ideas for different courses, but we wanted to see what they really wanted. So they were given this massive list of, if we had this type of social studies course, or this type of language arts course, or this type of music course, what would you want to take, so that before we even created a schedule, we knew what they wanted.
So I guess kind of going back to the Flexmod schedule, could you talk a little bit about the co-teaching part of that schedule and how you all see that as a real strength of that schedule?
So I was working with our coordinator, our scheduler, just this morning, and I was able to kind of talk through that with her. And what we've done is the English department, for example, we are eliminating year-long classes. It's all semester-based classes, like a college style, where students then pick and choose the type of literature course they want to take, the writing course they want to take. We have 3 required classes for every English student now. It will be a Grammar 101 course, a Comp 101 course, and a Literature 101 course. And so what we'll do is every teacher in our language arts department, which we have 12 right now, will be on one of those 3 teams, either the grammar team, the comp team, or the literature team. And so those large groups will then be co-taught between all 4 of those. Now, it might not be that all 4 are in every large group setting, but there will be at least 3 in each one. And so one teacher might give the lecture, one teacher might make sure the audio visual is being recorded, and one teacher might just be there to kind of help monitor, because we'll have 60 to 75 students in that room. But then throughout the week, all those teachers divide up into small groups, and so then they have interaction with 20 to 30 students who are part of that large group as well. So these students have an opportunity to learn now from not just one teacher every day, but a whole panel of 4 teachers. So if we have a teacher with 10 years of experience, they can kind of take the lead early in the semester, and a new teacher can kind of sit back and watch and say, all right, this is how a lecture works, this is how I need to structure this. And then about maybe October or even in November, when they start to feel a little bit more comfortable, they can step in and say, all right, I want to lead one of these large groups. I feel confident now. So that we can kind of help facilitate that transition from student teacher to full teacher.
And Jay, that was something when we went to Wisconsin that was really helpful, because you hear all these terms and you want to watch the videos, but then to actually go into the classroom, and Eli and Coach Holmes, one that's not here today, we witnessed a class where we walked in and there were 3 teachers in there, and one of the teachers was a first-year teacher. So you can imagine back to the day when you were a first-year teacher and the anxiety, and then, you know, and as a building administrator now and going into those classrooms, you have now as I'm evaluating those, and there are some of those that struggle with the instruction part's not a problem, but just the discipline in general and just classroom management. So think about those that struggle with that, and all of a sudden they're with a Mr. Swati in an English class that says, hey, you just hang back and watch here for a little while. And then, as like he said, as they get comfortable, so hopefully not only right now where we struggle with our location of getting teachers and making sure we have a full staff, that one, that helps with retention, and then 2, we feel like it's really going to help with our recruiting, that we're going to be able to recruit teachers more than we are now.
And so that's a great point. I mean, I don't like to think about my first year of teaching because it was just a nightmare. You know, but that's more on me than anybody else. But yeah, being able to pair new teachers with, you know, veteran teachers, talented teachers, is such a huge piece. You know, we have a mentoring program in Kansas for new teachers, and largely, you know, it has a lot of room for improvement. And I think to actually pair teachers up like that, and having a system and a schedule to allow that is a real strength. So thanks for sharing that. What are some steps? Could you talk a little bit about how you've communicated what's going on with Redesign at Liberal High School with the greater school community, your parents, community members, business industry, those kinds of things? Could you talk a little bit about what you've done and maybe some things that you're thinking about doing as we move through this spring?
It's really just now kind of coming to fruition. We talked quite a bit in the fall about wanting to be a part of these groups, and just recently we had our first opportunity. We have a liberal area coalition for family that includes almost 50 different organizations, and they meet once a month. So we were able to attend the other day and give our little spiel about redesign, and that opened up phenomenal doors, not just for people and learning about it, but just resources that we have in the community. So that was our first visit. Through that, we were also then asked to come visit other organizations, either it's Rotary or it's our group of realtors. And so we're starting to schedule different groups in the community. We're also beginning to plan just kind of community powwows and different visits where we will go out to different restaurants and different locations in towns and say, on this night, we'll be here to talk about this. And then hopefully have those opportunities. But we're also working now to create some vision walks and some ideas and opportunities for parents to come up to the school and see what we're doing here as well, to kind of learn from that.
Yeah, and having gone through the first iteration of a vision walk the other day, that's such a great tool, I think, to walk and talk about the vision that you have for the building, not only the physical environment, but just how the whole school operates and how students move about the building and the different offerings that the kids have. So that vision walk was really impactful. So last couple questions here. Number one, what has been the biggest challenge the Redesign team has faced to this date?
You're kind of talking about that. Some of it might be just a lot of great ideas. So we're kind of now talking about phasing them in. Because there's so much that we can and want to do, but trying to be realistic about what we should be doing and what realistically in August 2018 can be in place. I think the whirlwind also is something that's always going to be there. But sorry, I don't want the other.
Well, and I put it's actually kind of contradicts itself, but I put excitement because for some reason, I knew you were going to ask that question, Jay, so I was prepared. But, you know, it consumes you, and we're finding that it's consuming teachers, and what I find, it even consumes me of how maybe I discipline a kid that's into my office, you know, and rather than just saying, okay, here's your punishment, I sit and question them and kind of get to the bottom of it and say, I end up talking, and I'm like, oh, here I am talking redesign again. So really, even though that's a good feeling, it really does consume you. And like we said before, when we were in Wisconsin, we tried to make ourselves not talk about it at times, and we couldn't. And so I guess you see where I'm going, that it's a great problem to have, I guess.
Well, that's a great way to put it. I was in discussions with Stockton yesterday, and we were talking about this same thing, that, you know, from the beginning, we've promoted that 80-20 rule, or not rule, but kind of a guideline of every week, 80% is you're going to have to devote to the whirlwind, how the school operates currently and all those things. But 20% of your time, if you can squirrel that away and really focus on what's important. And one of the Redesign team members at Stockton had this to say about that. She said, I think that's 80-60 for us. And so there's been a lot of time on redesign. So that's great to hear that it does consume you, Scott, and all those there at Liberal. The last thing is, what's been the most positive experience or experiences that you've had with the process so far?
Well, I would say once we came back from Wisconsin and we talked to the staff, and you were here that day, but from the time that they really started to, the signature moves was huge. Because once we did that, and then those people really bought into, because, you know, you're going to have your skeptics out there, and you're going to have the ones that like, well, and what a lot of people don't know that are listening, we went through a lot of construction. You know, we had a lot of issues to start the year. And so to get past that and get to the point where we're like, you know what, we've got so much greater things going on, and for them to buy into it. And like Ashley said, it was kind of hard because we had some preconceived ideas, but if we were going to really make this happen, we had to have their buy-in. And being a former basketball coach and a control freak, and Ashley, no offense to my boss right here, I have to be careful what I say, but you have ideas that it's like, man, I have to trust them, you know, and Ashley did a great job of that, of trusting those people and giving guidance as needed. But I think just the excitement that is created within our school, but then now how it's starting to leak into the community, and people are starting to figure out, yeah, something's going on up there. I'd like to know more about it. And that's pretty exciting.
I'd say also in talking to the students, and we talk about this a lot, every time we have a student in our office, like you said, you'll end up talking redesign. But I think, one, I've started to notice our students are a lot more open with us, because I think they're starting to believe that we really do want their feedback and we really will do something with it. And so we're hearing a lot from that. And I think just different situations where you encounter a student struggling with something or something going on that you just don't really like, and think, well, okay, we've got redesign that's addressing this. It's hard not to start now. I mean, we do in elements, but it's just so exciting to know how many more needs we're going to meet of students that we have been missing for a really long time. Because I think we can hide easily behind accolades that you get from serving a good portion of your students. So you can say that you're doing a really good job, and we are. But you can hide behind that. But when you really dig down deep and talk about every single student, it's a whole different ballgame. And I'm excited every time we talk to them that we have a plan in place that's trying to address all of them.
That's so great. And it's so great to hear that you're tapping into all your students and actually each of your students. And that's what's so powerful behind what you just said. And so, and Scott too, thanks for sharing your thoughts today. And I know Eli probably had to run off to teach a class. And Eric Olmstead, who's their either pilot or co-pilot. I think they might be both co-pilots, but he's off coaching some basketball. So thank you so much for taking the time, Liberal High School, to share what's going on with redesign there at your school. And same to Meadowlark Elementary, and just Liberal as a district has been a great partner and has just been on fire from the beginning. So thank you so much for taking the time to share. I know that the chat was really up and humming, and so for those of you that utilize the chat, thank you. We've recorded everything. We actually can record and send out the chat. So if there's something written in the chat that you didn't get a chance to look at, we've got that to send out to you, and we'll make sure we do that. I wish we had more time for question and answer, because I think that both Meadowlark and Liberal, you would have had quite a few questions today. But in the essence of valuing everybody's time, we're going to move on and just end the meeting with just a few general announcements. But again, I want to thank you so much to Liberal Schools for joining us today. And Tammy, if you're still on, and if they haven't locked you down yet there in Olathe, if you want to jump in, that's fine. I'll start off with one announcement for the group is that we've come up with the next iteration of redesign in Kansas, Gemini 2, and the announcement went out this week. And so we're already thinking about, as our focus at the state level is scaling this across the state, we've already begun and already have launched really the next iteration of Redesign in Kansas. It is Gemini 2. And for those Gemini 1 schools, the impact of that is that we've developed a regional coaching model. I say developed, we're still developing it as we speak, but a regional coaching model for next year that would include any Gemini 1 school that has not launched. So if you are a Gemini 1 school and your launch date is August of 2019, next year we're going to offer a regional model, coaching model at the service centers across Kansas on an every other week basis. So much like the schedule that we keep with the Mercury schools of being on site in their buildings, we're going to do that, mimic that process because we believe in that process. And we're going to mimic that at the regional service centers next year. And that's for any Gemini 1 school that has not launched and for any Gemini 2 school that gets accepted into that cohort. So that brings up the idea that the Gemini 1 schools, you all know you have the option to either launch of this, August of 2018, or wait and launch in August of 2019. So as you discuss that, I know we asked that question way too early last semester, but we wanted you to be thinking about it. As you mull over that decision of when you want to launch, what we've done is developed a comprehensive redesign plan evaluation form. Think of it much like a pre-flight checklist that takes you through. These are the things that at the state level we've seen to be highly successful as far as to this point that we know of to lead towards launching in this August. So as you might imagine, that pre-flight checklist includes things like developing a redesign team that has a strong pilot and co-pilot, the value of visiting other models, so school visits. A lot of those things that we talked about today that you heard from Meadowlark and Liberal will be in that checklist. And so it provides you as a district and as a building the opportunity to walk through and say, are we really ready to launch in August of 2018 or do we need to wait? So that will be coming out next week. Our whole thing is for a successful launch is we want it, it's going to be bumpy. I mean, it's going to be a turbulent ride when you change this high level of change, that first year of implementation post-launch. But we want as much as it can happen for you to be, number one, very successful with that launch. And so we feel like this evaluation form will allow you to make a really informed decision about when is the right time to launch our redesigned system as a Gemini 1 school. So that's really all that we have moving forward as far as announcements. I know that our next meeting is 2 weeks from today, and it will feature the McPherson School District. It's a Mercury district, so you'll hear from their elementary and their middle school at our next Gemini meeting, so you can look forward to that. At this time, I think what we're going to go ahead and do is adjourn the meeting. If you have questions that you'd like to stay on, I'll keep the meeting running for another 10, 15 minutes, however long it takes to tap everyone out. But as far as the general meeting, we'll adjourn at this time, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. So thank you to everybody's attention, and look forward to seeing you down the road.
Hey, Jay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You got me?
Yeah, there you go. Sorry, Jared. Go ahead.
Hey, I just want to get your thoughts on this. This is something that I think, and I got some good responses on the chat, but, as we look through this redesign process and everything that we want to do, and we talk about flexible schedules and credits and, I love the lunch conversation and those types of things, but what is the difference between, the redesign and truly what's best practices? I guess I'm trying to separate. Maybe there's not a separation. Maybe they're all in one, but I feel like a lot of these things, as I listen and hear these, I'm like, well, is this really what we should be doing anyway? Is it really a redesign? Does that make sense? Kind of what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard question to number one, just formulate, and then secondly, for me to answer it. But, something that Ashley said really kind of resonated with me as far as, what is redesign? It's a complete overhaul. You're looking at every single thing and questioning every single thing about how your building operates, from lunch to instructional practices, everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the best practices, if you look at how people have approached best practices in the past, it's largely been around classroom instruction.
Right.
So, but redesign is much bigger than just that. It's bigger. It's looking at your entire system. Now, it's not saying throw out the things that are working. In fact, a lot of the things that are going on in the Mercury schools, and I know in a lot of our Gemini schools, things that are working, you're just looking at how we can scale this to affect more students and more staff. So that's part of it. And then the other part of it is that risk taking. Hey, we have got to make a statement here, and our system has to really change to meet the needs of our students, which is just, I always think about the each student model, and it boggles my mind. But when you think about, is it possible to set up a system to where you can personalize an education for each of your students? Now, most people that are reasonable are going to say, no, that's not possible. That's why this is so compelling. That's why that's what makes you know that this is a great vision for the state of Kansas, is that people's first inclination is that's not possible. I think that's a great vision. And so, and what's great about it is we've got schools like yours and our Mercury schools, all our Gemini 1 schools that are saying we can do this. So I'm getting a little off topic here. Sorry, I'll jump off.
No, that's perfect. That's the kind of, I wanted to hear that from you and kind of get some feedback on what your thought was on that process.
Well, and the other thing I think about is, what is a successful launch? We talk about this a lot. And when you launch in August of 2018, if you're a Mercury school, it's not about being highly successful with what you're implementing. It's about implementing new things. You're going to have to constantly tweak and be nimble with changing that which you just launched, because it may be 2 weeks in and it's like lunch isn't working right and you've got to change it. But so it's changed. We've kind of worded it like this, that for all students and for all staff, it should seem like a totally different system. It should really be totally different. It should feel new. It should feel novel. And it's something that, but on the other side of that conversation is, you've got to be able to quickly change things as you move through and adapt to what people are saying and providing feedback. Anyway, thanks for joining us. It's great. I know you're doing a lot of great things, with Power Hour and lunch, and you've got a lot of really nice redesigned space there at Baser Linwood High School that I know a lot of people have taken tours of that, myself included, have been blown away. So it's great that Baser Linwood schools are on with us. Rachel, and I see it in the chat, and I might respond too in the chat, but the pre-flight checklist it's pretty much ready to go. We're going to roll that out next week. So we'll send that out next week, and that'll allow the Gemini schools time to work through that document and decide on when they want to launch.
Hey Jay, filet mignon for dinner at Summit.
Well, that was one of the choices. That was one of the choices. If you could bring some of that, what is that?
Hillsboro sausage.
What is it?
Bring some sausage.
Bring some Hillsboro sausage, man. That would pop off. That would be awesome. I just, being as cheap as I am, I don't even want to look at the prices that they charge at hotels. So,
hey, did you did you hear about, I don't know where this was and I wouldn't bring it up anyway, but a menu somebody served here not too long ago in their food service. There was no protein. But what?
Oh my gosh.
Don't go vegan on me though.
Oh no.
I got big like this because I ate a lot of meat.
We're just excited to host that many people. Summit's, we think
how many
today. We just finalized the specifics to the agenda yesterday, so that'll be coming out early next week.
But 9 to 3, we've got Summit coming in, and we're excited for people to come and listen about all the things that they promote. You know, with kind of a critical eye too, and looking at that and looking at that program for your redesign and for your school.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're in a gathering. We're just gathering a lot of stuff. We're not, because we're looking at how do we do this way different than what we are. But so we want to figure out how can we put our core or something like that into our career classes. So we just have a list of competencies, and you're going through that and learning those competencies in those classes. So we're talking redesign. We really want to look different.
Right. You know, and
I get it, Max. I know you. I know you want to look a lot different. I think that Summit that platform that Summit provides, you know, if the way they roll it out, it's only about the core. So when you go in and look at a school that's adopted Summit, when you go and look at the software, the learning management system, there are none of their none of their elective courses are even listed. And that's
right.
Something that we as a state, we want to make sure that platform is customizable to where you can take that and you can put all of your courses into that platform. And then that's what I love about that platform is you can easily blend the standards from one course into another. And, you know, and it's really simple for the students to interface with and keep track. You know, it really lends itself to the student owning their learning because they can see it. And they're really kind of in charge of it.
Is there a place, and it probably has been forever, but that we can get one place that you could go and just list all of our standards, K-12.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, that would be easily loaded into Summit or easily loaded. I don't know how Summit looks yet, but I'm thinking of Project Foundry as I'm thinking about this.
Right.
And you could develop your own. You know, we're struggling. We really want to see Summit, but Project Foundry sounds pretty good too to us. So
well, something to keep in mind, Max, and this is completely, you know, we just kind of hatched this over as we've been thinking about redesigning Kansas. We really just hatched this over Christmas break.
So with Summit, you know, we're thinking, what if we Kansify that platform? So when you go in and you go into that platform, it doesn't even say Summit on it. It just says Kansas. There's nothing keeping us from, if Summit will allow it, I guess, there's nothing keeping us from having our people at the state level add in
correct
standards, do all that work so that when we roll that out, that's already done for you.
Exactly. That would be awesome.
That's what
there's some time into that.
Yes.
You know, that's pathways and all that. There's some time that we would be using a lot of energy on. And the one thing that we're short of right now is time.
Right.
Meaning we, you know, as we made cuts here, we cut professional development days, we cut days off the school, you know, and now as we add those add back, those cost money. So we have to figure out how to get everything underneath all that. And I heard some ideas today, but I mean, I don't know. we're interested in both of those. We're interested in, I wouldn't want to be, even if it's Summit, I know you have to agree to do their, teach it in the manner they teach it, but it could still be customizable to each school, I'd hope.
Actually, you don't have to, they don't really have any non-negotiables as far as how you teach. And they also, and this might be a misnomer out there, but they don't have, or a misconception, they don't have a prescribed schedule you have to follow. So what their non-negotiables are the 4 key areas of skill development for students. And that's sense of purpose, which for us aligns really well with an IPS. Habits of success,
right,
which for us really aligns well with social emotional learning. Content knowledge, which, and that's just your standards. And then cognitive skills.
Right.
And they approach Summit, how Summit approaches cognitive skill development is projects. It's project-based learning.
This is going to be really interesting because, and I haven't read enough into it, obviously, because I'm asking some stupid things here probably. But as I look at that, and I remember reading about their rubric, and a rubric is scored more on 30%, it's 70% cognitive, 30% content. Isn't that right?
Yeah, well, that's how the grade is calculated for each student.
Okay.
Their grades are calculated with, they're weighted 70% of their cognitive skill development through projects. And the rubric that you're talking about is one that Stanford developed, that teachers use that rubric with students through a project. And in the end, it evaluates their cognitive skill development during that project. That's 70% of the student's grade. Only 30% of the grade is the student exhibiting content knowledge.
So, and I'm on board with that, but we'll as I guess what our teachers are afraid of, as we talk to them about this a little bit, is can they get all their content in? You know how that is. We've been glued to those state assessments for the last 12 years. We haven't looked at them for about 3, but and so they want to make sure that their kids have everything they need to have when they go to the next level, post-secondary. So that's a little bit of the concern they have as we're doing the other things. And I said, we don't know enough about it. We just need to go hear about it.
Exactly.
So but we were pretty excited when we heard it the first time.
Yeah, I think Thursday is going to be a great learning day. And remember that it goes right now, Summit is grades 4 through 12. So we're really, Tammy's doing a great job of looking at the different models out there, K through 3. And we've got some Mercury schools that are really planning some really nice things with project-based learning and those kinds of things that somewhat mimic, what Summit promotes. So, but it's grades 4 through 12. And I really think at the heart of it, it doesn't matter if it's Summit or whatever else, but through Redesign, it's really about, for the student, it's becoming more student-centered. So when you talk students and covering the content, some of that responsibility of the teacher covering the content and the students learning it, a lot of it's put over onto the student.
Right.
That's a different role.
You'll get the rigor you want too, because the students will demand what they want to know.
Right, and that's the beauty of with Summit. They've got all those playlists that you as a teacher can either assign and make mandatory, or you can allow the students to pick and choose the playlist that they like, and it mimics or it fits with how they learn best. So I think there's a lot to the changing role of the teacher in this.
What is that? Let's just say that there was a bunch of schools that wanted to go with Summit Learning. How do you see the state helping us on the professional development that has to happen with it?
Well, I mean, the professional development, if you apply to be a Summit school and then you become a Summit school, we're not really comfortable with a school being labeled a Summit school yet.
Right.
But if you do that, they provide the summertime professional development training for free. And if we have enough schools, we're gonna be able to bring that to Kansas.
And that's what I was wondering, because here's what I'm thinking. If I send, let's say, grades 4 through 12, and you send your core teachers to this, that's quite a few teachers staying for 2 weeks in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which would be the closest right now.
Right.
And you got to pay, you pay them to be there because they're working. Right. You pay them to learn. You pay for their housing, their food. It gets pretty expensive pretty fast. I didn't know if there would be a place where we would be able to share some of those costs, I guess, if there was a group of us, I guess.
Okay. Well, I'm completely lost on that one just because we haven't formulated that up. We still need to see who's in and, talk through all that stuff. And then also, we want to make sure if we do have that many schools involved that, we want to make sure that Summit is working in Kansas and the platform and all those trainings and all that's done on our terms as a state.
So what I guess what I was asking, if there was like 5 districts that decided to do this, could we get Summit to come to where we're at? And then we just all go there to get trained.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, that's,
so it may not be us staying overnight. It'd be us driving back and forth.
Yes.
And that's the kind of money I'm looking to save, not to, I agree with all the PD it takes, but is there a way that we could centralize that so we could save some money that way?
Yeah, I can't answer that now, but I think the more schools that we have, the more likelihood that we'll be able to set up a model just like that.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's all I had. I just say thanks for what you're doing, and we're learning. We're not doing much with you on there yet, but we're learning. We're just sitting back, and we meet every Friday and we're talking about it. So we're trying to get to some points. We're doing some piloting, and we're doing some things, and so we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Thanks, Max. Thanks for your time, bud. Yeah. Okay, we have a handful of diehards just ready to. Is there anybody else that has anything for the good of the cause? Oh, Meadowlark, you're just sticking with it. I love it. Always learning. Shauna, I'm having.
That's right. We were just thinking there's always a learning opportunity. We didn't want to miss out. So thanks for having us, Jay. We'd be interested in hearing some of the others. So if you have them recorded, if you'll just send them, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
Do that.
Oh yeah, for sure. We'll send those out. You can critique yourself like I always do, and don't be too hard on yourself. You guys did phenomenal. So
thank you.
Tammy and I just kind of hatched this idea. Actually, she hatched it last time after she left Liberal. She was like, I've got to have them with the Gemini schools talking about Twisted Tuesdays. So that's where this kind of hatched. And so I think it's a really good model that it's going to serve us well the rest of the spring semester. So
yeah, it has worked well for us. So
yeah.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Talk to you. Bye-bye.
See ya. And I think I've officially tapped everybody out. So some of you may actually be taking a nap by now. So I'll go ahead and end the meeting unofficially, and we'll talk to everybody next time.